We've been selected by the Department of Transportation and the FAA as the only tribal government to be involved in some of these emerging aviation pilot initiatives, like the Integration Pilot Program for drones. It's really an interesting story because the Choctaw Nation started from scratch about 5 years ago. They bought this property, and as they were looking at it, they started to say, what could we use this for innovatively? One of the things they wanted to do was keep the property pristine. That's the perfect type of situation for an aviation test range. So we started looking at what would happen if we were to develop this kind of a sandbox, an emerging aviation sandbox, United States. What if we started to develop this? And for the first time, a tribal government steps in and says, okay, we're going to take the lead and try to really innovate in this area. And we realized that these companies need access to places where they can test safely, where someone has the ability to control the ground risks, the air risks, things like that. So we've created an environment that's very unique in the United States that allows these companies to come out, fly very safely, quietly, privately, but in a way that they can move quickly toward getting in the air, certifying their vehicles, demonstrating safety. What's really happening is we're transitioning to new propulsion systems, which are electric-based. Just like we're seeing happen with automobiles, where we're moving to electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles, basically electric cars. The same thing is happening in aviation. So we're a very principal player really in this emerging industry, which people are starting to refer to as flying cars or flying taxis. It's really just the next generation of aviation, which is electric-powered aircraft. 5 years ago, if you went to aviation conferences or conventions or trade shows around the world, people wouldn't have known who the Choctaw Nation was. Now we go just about anywhere, people know the Choctaw Nation because they know that we're associated with this emerging aviation technology. So it's been a really exciting time for the nation, but also to see the Choctaw Nation step out and lead, both as a tribal government, but also as just literally one of the governments in the United States that's really starting to move forward and lead in a very positive and productive way for this emerging industry. So if you think about it, if we have these vehicles flying in the next 5 or 10 years, we've beat the Jetsons by about 30 years. And so that's actually pretty impressive. What I really appreciate working for a tribal government is that I've worked for the federal government, I've worked for the state, I've worked at all different levels of government before in my career. And this is the first level of government that I've ever worked with that thinks as far ahead in the future as they do.
Oklahoma thrives.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy podcast. And I'm Dawn Sold. If you haven't figured it out yet, we've got the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma's representative here with us, James Grimsley, and we're so excited to have James back on the show. This is a new month dedicated to this theme of R&D to real world ops. And James and the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma really do fairly embrace that theme. And we're so thankful to have you as a sponsor of this month and also to have you back on the show again.
Yes, thank you, Don. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So great video. And by the way, speaking of videos, if you haven't seen James and the Choctaw Nation on my PBS special on drones and eVTOLs, go back and check that out. We'll make sure you guys have access to that link. It was so fun going out to the Daisy Ranch in Durant, Oklahoma, and getting to see everything live myself. So we're going to talk about that here today and all the R&D and real world operations that are going on there. So James, before we dive into that, for those that don't know you, can you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure. My name is James Grimsley. So I serve currently as the Executive Director of Advanced Technology Initiatives with the Choctaw Nation. And we'll kind of talk a little bit more about my particular department. My own background is I grew up right in the heart of the reservation. Both sides of my family go back multiple generations. I was the first college graduate. Actually paid my way through school at the time. You know, you could actually do that when I went to college. You could work a couple of little jobs and pay your way. But I got my bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering. I did all my graduate work in mechanical engineering and started my career working with the Air Force as a civilian electronics engineer working on cruise missiles. And so ended up jumping to the contractual world, still working primarily with the Air Force. I always felt blue. I was never quite blue. My dad was in the Air Force. I was born in an Air Force Base hospital, but a lot of my career in life has actually sort of involved the Air Force. I kept accidentally finding my way back with uncrewed systems, and it wasn't necessarily intentional when I started. I was an aerospace engineer. I did some UAS then back in the 80s, but I kept always accidentally going back to some form of remotely piloted stuff, and got around to about 2007, and I thought, this must be my destiny. Maybe I'm being told something. And I decided at that point to just commit myself to commercialization of the technology. I was working a lot with the DoD defense side, but it's been a fun ride. I remember writing notes to myself and complaining back in 2008 that people don't know about this industry. Now they do. So we made big strides. So anyway, I worked in academia. I worked in federal government. I've worked as an executive at a defense contractor. I had my own company doing R&D for a while. So pretty wide range of things I've done in my career.
And at some point, you reconnected with the Choctaw Nation on drones specifically. I remember this story, James, because well, you've told it to me in person, of course,
Right.
over dinner. But you know, they were looking to do something interesting in advanced technologies, and they approached you to look at their land and what could be done. And just tell us very briefly about that.
Sure. Well, at the time, I was at the University of Oklahoma, so I was an associate vice president for research, managing kind of the applied research portfolio. And a lot of the leadership of the tribe are people that I grew up with. And I've always had high regard for the Choctaw Nation. I've always had just respect for the culture because I grew up in the culture. The tribe reached out to me when I was at the university and said, we'd like to meet with you. There's some things we'd like to talk to you about. So I came down and they showed me this large piece of property. It's 44,000 acres that they had bought. And they asked me, do you think we could do something with this emerging tech, this emerging aviation? Could you do something with this property? And I, as an engineer, I always point out the negative first. We tend to do that. I talked about all the things that were missing. I said, you have no background in past performance. There's no infrastructure here. They patiently listened to me and they said, well, could we hire you as a consultant to figure that out? And so I said, sure, not necessarily any promises, but yeah, we'll look at it and see what we can do. Within about 2 or 3 months, it started looking very promising. And it was to the point, literally, that made me the offer I couldn't refuse to come down and actually run and build this. The tribe said, we want to do more things like this. So it's been a much bigger success than I had probably anticipated. If you had gone 6 years ago to any aviation conference, nobody would have known who the Choctaw Nation is. We have amazing brand recognition now. And so we bootstrapped something that's turned into a sort of a point of pride for the tribe. They're very proud of it. And it's having all sorts of side effects, everything from STEM to economic development. There's so many benefits we're starting to realize because of this particular effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the Choctaw Nation, you're absolutely right. I think your efforts, the related efforts of your team, obviously the tribe itself have really propelled it to being leaders in drones and emerging technologies. And that seal we see at the bottom of the screen there, people recognize it now. And I think that's so amazing. Tell us a little bit about the Choctaw Nation, because when I was down there in Durant, you gave me a tour that I'll never forget of the museum there that's dedicated to the nation. It was so incredible and moving. Tell us just a little bit about the nation.
Sure. Well, the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma is the third largest federally recognized tribal government. The Choctaws were the first to come across on what we call the Trail of Tears. It was actually a forced relocation around the 1830s or so. And the story of the Choctaws is one of resilience, very resilient people. I was very fortunate to grow up in the heart of the Choctaw Nation because our culture in this part of the state pretty much is the Choctaw culture. Everything from the sense of humor to just the way that people are very friendly and get along with each other well. That's all from the Choctaw culture itself. But the tribe has done amazingly well. And as fate would have it, they moved to a wilderness in the 1830s, and it turns out a couple of hundred years later that we're right on the border of some of the largest growth happening in the country right now in terms of economic activity. We literally border and right next door to the Dallas-Fort Worth region, and that's having amazing impacts on our own economy and the opportunities we have here. So the Choctaws prevail. They think so long term, and that was a big change for me after working in different levels of government. The Choctaws think generationally. And so our return on vision type metrics that we look at is what will things do for people's grandchildren? What will it do to the great grandchildren? And that's literally the lens that the tribe looks through and the leadership looks through when they make decisions. I very much admire that patience, because we can lay out a long-term plan, patiently work toward it, not be influenced or distracted by hype. We say, okay, this is the end point. We're going to set it out here when we know we can do it. We're going to continue to work toward it. And that is something that's been really kind of, it's pretty cool to be part of. You know, the different things I've been in my career that are always so fast paced or driven by political cycles. That's not the case here.
Well, you said a couple things there that I love. Number one, return on vision. You know, like ROV, most people think remotely operated vehicles. Your ROV is return on vision. And so,
Yes.
James, that vision for the Choctaw Nation is really about focusing on living out the Choctaw, did I say it right? The Choctaw
Yes.
spirit, faith, family, and culture. And I'd love to hear your view and perspective on how that vision is being lived out in these initiatives on emerging tech that aid in prosperity and growth.
Sure. So for those that may not know, the word Choctaw is the Choctaw word for Choctaw. So the Choctaw people are the Choctaw people. So if you think about what happened, this has been when the early Choctaws moved across, they could only take what they could carry. We believe several thousand died. We don't even know the number, but we believe several thousand died along the trail. They got to the Mississippi River, and then we're told you can't even bring as much as you're carrying, you know. And so they showed up with just the clothes on their back, basically. You know, they had the cultures, traditions, and but that was about it. And so we, in this area, we were pretty much subject to sort of generational poverty for a long time. Some of the highest unemployment rates in the country were here. Not a lot of opportunities. You know, I was at the age back when I graduated high school, if you had any chance to leave, you did. We had this net exit of people who had the ability to go get an education. I was the first college graduate in my family.
Yeah.
But the tribe has turned that around, and the way they're doing it, and I love the chief's vision and his kind of directive to us is first we have to make people whole. Generational poverty leaves so many effects, and it's not easy to fix by just with money. And so there's so many things that we have to do to make people whole. You know, generational poverty affects everything from health to, you know, patterns of that you can't escape of different things. So that's the number one thing. We make people whole. The next thing is we create opportunities for now, but also the future. We make these investments that in the future will continue to let the tribe sort of live out its sovereignty, be able to take care of itself and live with self-determination. So those are the things we look at. If you'll see our seal, you'll notice that the bow is unstrung. That's because the Choctaw Nation, the Choctaw people are at peace, and that's what's symbolized in that seal. We're not at war. You know, many generations ago, it would have been strung, but it's unstrung right now to reflect that we are at peace, and we're working toward the benefit of the people, not only our tribal members, but the people around us within the region.
Wow. It's always so inspirational to listen to you, and especially how you describe the nation. The Trail of Tears. For those of you, if you ever get to Durant, Oklahoma, please visit this museum. I just remember how moving that area was, that described the Trail of Tears pictorially up a wall, but literally and symbolically, you had to walk up basically the room, you know, you had to walk up to show the difficulty and the struggle, and just amazing, all the things that the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma has done, and especially in emerging aviation and drones. I mean, you know, you guys were the first in for the FAA's integration pilot program. Lots of firsts, you know, with the tribe, part of the Beyond program now, and working still to this day on safe integration of UAS into the national airspace and advanced air mobility as well. So many achievements. And I think we have a slide here. Let's talk about your goals.
Sure. Well, one of the big things we're looking at is we take UAS and AAM very seriously. I also serve as a state transportation commissioner, which means I have responsibility for the oversight of our highways and bridges and some rail and things like that. In rural areas, our infrastructure is not up to where it needs to be, and it causes profound safety implications for the people. Within a place like the Choctaw Nation Reservation, you have more than twice the chances of dying in a highway traffic fatality situation than you do in an urban area, even though we're much more sparsely populated than an urban area. The reality is that there's not enough money on the horizon for the United States to get all of our roads up to shape. We're having troubles keeping up with the deterioration curve, and there's still not enough money. And so a lot of the things we're doing in emerging aviation is that realization that we're going to have to leapfrog. We have to find a way that we overcome that in a big way quickly, and that's why we're very positive about aviation. We were very strongly against the word or acronym UAM, because we were arguing it's advanced, aerial mobility. It's not urban, because we probably have more situations and use cases early than even some of the urban areas have. But what we're looking at is we need to improve our safety. We need to improve the quality of life. People live in the reservation because they love it. They love the quality of that. They love our environment. And we would like to be able to give people access to the things that they need, and it makes their lives better. So really what we're looking at solving is this access to X. It's access to more rapid healthcare, more immediate healthcare, things like that. So the slide that was shown there is one of the initial things. It's an infrastructure corridor that we're working with that will connect the North Dallas area through a whole corridor of the Choctaw Nation, involving an existing highway freight corridor, existing rail, existing airports. It's very real. We're working on it, and we have already some segments. We have some limited approvals to start flying segments of that right now. But we do seriously think this will change the quality of life, and we're hopeful that it will change the quality of life in the future.
Well, I know it will. I mean, I have no doubt about that. I mean, you talked about making people whole, these generational deficits.
Mhm.
And I love the kind of the long-term view, right? So you're working in the short term for these long-term changes, and it's really amazing. So let's talk about some of those long-term economic opportunities that you're aiming to create through these various advanced aviation initiatives in terms of job creation and economic diversification.
Sure. Well, we believe it'll come in change in phases, and so we actually have written about this publicly about the next 20 to 30 years, how we envision things will happen. The easiest use cases to justify right now are those that involve health and safety. We have our own hospital system, we have our own clinics, we have our own pharmacy system, and we have a lot of people out on the roads that don't necessarily need to be driving on these dangerous roads. Moving samples between clinics, test samples and things like that, or just getting people's prescriptions to them. And so we believe that the health-related applications will be the most important first use case. There's a different ROI when you're looking at health. You're saving people's lives, you're improving the quality of life. You're not delivering something where it's just pennies on the dollar. We're looking for an ROI. It's something that significantly impacts the people. The second, which will be somewhat parallel, would be AAM in almost a novelty use, and that we have multiple resorts, and we spend money to move people to those resorts and provide a good experience when they arrive. And so there's immediate AAM applications from some of our resort casinos to airports. So we're looking at probably those two. One's a novelty case, and it's not that we're just trying to cater to the wealthy or something, but those are the cases that are low hanging fruit we can do. We're very focused on the health related, and we've already done some economic studies within the Choctaw Nation to look at just the cost savings that we would have, not measuring the human part of it, just the cost. And we're looking at saving quite a bit of money by being able to do things like drone delivery soon. So we're actually actively working on that now, and I'm pretty optimistic. We will see B2C, I think, at some point, but we're going to be focusing on those internal missions first.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about some of the RDT&E, right? Research, development, test, and evaluation that you're doing within the nation right now on that Daisy Ranch, and the significance of it.
Sure. We actually are working with several agencies. We're working with quite a few institutions of higher education. One that really appeals to me a lot is the weather research side of it, where we're studying the lower boundary layer. And before we had multi-rotor small systems, we didn't have a good way to really measure and understand the lower atmosphere. We launched weather balloons, but they're driven by the wind. And we've always had that need to do vertical profiles, go up and down and get a vertical, like, cross-section slice of the lower atmosphere.
Yeah.
And that's very important because the National Academies back in 2008 or so said that one of the biggest challenges we have is we don't understand that lower atmosphere. That's where the energy is. That's where things bubble up. That's where all the things happen. When I was at the university, we were looking at situations where we would look at improved data. If we could actually collect rich 3D data, what would it do with existing weather models? And just the existing models, it was amazing. So we are doing some of that research here. We have some unique COAs that are allowing us to do some research with some of our academic partners. But we're also just working with a lot of companies doing their own R&D. A lot of companies, the first time they've flown has been here. We have a very safe environment to fly in. We pretty much manage the ground risk, which is difficult to do. We're one of the only non-military sites in the country that actually can manage the ground risk because we own the land. But we've been working with a variety of companies. We were the first entity in North America last summer to fly using FCC-approved protected C-band for an FAA-approved BV loss mission for small UAS. So we had a system under 55 pounds that used C-band. It's a historic first last summer. So it's pretty broad. We're also involved in some of the social sciences, which is going to be very important for any technology in the future, is how do the communities think about it? What is their expectations for how we regulate or how we control or how we make sure that they get the benefits and we manage maybe some of the risks with it. So we're very active in that in terms of working with our communities and our different cities and counties throughout the reservation. So it's pretty broad. We do quite a bit of stuff with a lot of different entities.
But you've got a lot of wide open area, wide open skies, and just so people understand, James, the reservation is governed by the tribe, the land, but the airspace is still FAA, right? So it's a collaboration, which is why you've been involved in all of these different R&D programs with the FAA. And I know you've got some brick and mortar infrastructure now, because when you said earlier, when you first went there, was like nothing there. I remember when I went there, you had like basically I don't want to call it a helipad. I guess it's almost like a helipad, right? The concrete launching pad, drone port. You had just built a modular, basically guest facility on the land there. You have all kinds of segmented areas. There are people doing things that you wouldn't tell us about because they were military, and other people launching, over here. But you also just broke ground in October of last year on the Emerging Aviation Technology Center. Tell us about that and how that's going.
Well, it's actually been, we completed an additional 2 buildings since you were here, just large hangars. And then the Emerging Aviation Technology Center is a 3-story building that will be the hub of what we're doing. And so it'll have the labs, telemetry rooms. We're building a very large remote operations center. We have things like operations trailers where we can do that now. We have a small operations center in one of the hangars, but we'll have it will be top-notch world-class facility. We're building a fabrication facility right next to that. The fabrication facility will be active in July. It'll be completed. We'll be starting to work on that. So it'll be a state-of-the-art, sort of like a makerspace on steroids. It'll be a very nice fabrication facility. There's some other initiatives that you can't announce yet, but that will be happening as part of that. But this will basically serve as just the nerve center of everything. So if you think about the way people want to test, if you've ever, in your career, you understand how the military test ranges work. Long missions, long days, you want to stay there for weeks. One of the big things that we are doing is we're building a RV park, because a lot of the contractors and partners we have like to bring RVs and stay for the whole time. So we're building an RV park as part of that. So by January of 2025, the phase 1 is what we're calling will be completed. Phase 2 will be quite a few more hangars. And if you see that upper right-hand figure there, that left side is phase 2. The right side is really phase 1. There are a couple of buildings that's not shown on the right. That particular chart's not updated, but there's been quite a bit happen. We also have our own radar system, so we've built out our own ground-based radar network. We've built out our own ADSB receiver network throughout the reservation. We've built out our own C2 communications radio network as well. So we have multiple bands, including the protected C-band, where we have a license. So we're thinking very holistically about all the things we need. As we're initially building out our infrastructure, we're thinking about that corridor, because what we're building on the corridor is actually an infrastructure corridor. But we have an eye on ubiquity, which means we want to function across the entire Choctaw Reservation. And what you're seeing there on that particular figure there, and other thing may be going down, but what you were seeing there is the largest permission for BV loss that we've been granted by the FAA so far, which is a 43-mile corridor, but from McAllister, the upper northernmost city in the reservation, to a city called Atoka, which is sort of in the middle, and that is roughly half of that longer-term corridor. So we can fly that now. We haven't yet. We're still going through some safety work we're doing internally, but we do have that permission now, and it's one of the longest, largest in the country so far for BV loss.
And remind me, James, but isn't Reba McEntire from Atoka? And didn't she just open a restaurant? So yes. I guess the question is somebody going to be delivering food from Reba's restaurant
yes.
in the corridor to people?
Yes, in fact, Reba's is catered because we have a lot of international orders. Yeah. And Reba's has a chef that is capable of producing anything. And so all we have to say is, this is the cuisine we need. Can you provide some options? And so we actually cater food there. Interestingly enough, Reba's father owned some of this property at one point as part of his ranch, and then they later sold off. So Reba came out to visit us one day, brought her fiance Rex Lynn, and I didn't recognize him. He had a mask on, but Reba loved it. And so we have pictures of her with a lot of the drones, and great lady. I actually grew up knowing her long before she was famous. A really, really good person. But Reba's is a pretty neat place. If you come out here, you have to go to Atoka and eat at Reba's. It's a really cool experience.
Well, and not only that, but then you have to stay at the Choctaws Casino and Resort, which, by the way, James, not just saying this, I've been to Las Vegas. I can't tell you how many times. I've stayed out so many places. When I got the privilege of staying at your resort and casino, I was like, this is like one of the nicest places I've ever been. And of course, the day we left, this was like our team from the Wings Over the Rockies Museum. We were taping that PBS special. What do I see in the rearview mirror? Like, tonight, Journey. I was like, why are we not staying? Journey's playing there tonight. That's insane. So just amazing. But look, lots of building going on, lots of construction, lots of activity. And part of this is, I guess, due to the fact that you all received an Economic Development Administration and U.S. Department of Agriculture grant that you put towards this center. So tell us a little bit about those funds and how it's fueling some of these improvements that we're seeing across the ranch now.
Well, if you came out to the ranch maybe 5 or 6 years ago, there was nothing here. It was a big, very beautiful pasture in this particular, but there's nothing here. So we've actually received quite a bit of funding from ARPA. So we've had ARPA funds, we've had EDA, USDA, but everything else is tribal funds. All of the operations, all the initial infrastructure was purely tribal funds. But we're very excited because there's other things we're about to hopefully announce soon that leverages on all of those things. Sort of a little side industry that's emerging very, very quickly that we're going to be heavily involved in. So there's a lot of neat things happening, but it's been a big challenge because if you go out to somewhere where there's no infrastructure, nothing built, you have to bootstrap. And that's exactly what we've had to do. That's why it's taken a little bit longer than maybe I'd anticipated to get to the point where we are now. But it's accelerating as we get that infrastructure in place.
Yeah, well, and you were talking about the RV park, that little facility maybe was almost like a tiny house for some of the folks that come out to your place. Was amazing. I hope you build some more of those because I mean, I would stay. I was like, can we just stay here? But no, I was actually very glad to stay at the casino. It was like way better.
Yeah, we actually have additional lodging that it's a lot of times our staff has to stay here 24 hours a day, for different tests and stuff. So we have some additional lodging for our staff on site within the compound.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, you do have a big staff, and that has really grown as well.
Exactly.
So tell us about uh, there's been so much going on, but you mentioned also, this kind of idea of making people whole and the STEM initiatives, science, technology, engineering, math initiatives that you've been doing. How have you been leveraging ATI and these various initiatives to help the Choctaw Nation and also people in the larger kind of Durant area?
Right. Well, the one of the facets that's I feel like it's our responsibility to do is STEM outreach. So we travel to the schools, we bring operations trailers, and even let the kids fly drones back at the ranch, under 107. But we have remote unattended stuff that they can do. But we host a lot of schools out here. We do camps. We do as much as we can because when I was a young kid, even growing up in rural Oklahoma, I never met an engineer and didn't really know a scientist. But I remember sitting and watching the black and white TV broadcast of the Apollo missions, and that so much influenced my life. I was so, as a little kid, that just seemed incredible that there were people on this planet that figured out how to do that. And if you think of the generations now, they have a little bit different things that they're seeing that's inspiring in robotics. When we saw the Martian rovers and things, that really had a big uptick in them. But kids very much are excited about emerging aviation. So we try to do as much hands-on as we can. We've already seen some success stories. We had a young lady that was in high school. Her aunt contacted me. She said, she's so excited about what you guys are doing. Can she just come see it? And I said, well, we'll do better than that. She can come be an intern, be on our flight crew, come function with us.
Oh,
It
that's so
influenced her
cool.
so much that she's now an aerospace engineering major. She said this was so cool. She said, I love seeing people collaborating, communicating, working together. She said, I wanted to do this as a career. So we're already seeing dividends on that. And those dividends are far more important to me than any economic dividend we're going to have, because we're changing lives. That will change families forever. If you help increase the standard of living and opportunity for families, that can last for many generations. And so those are the things that excite me, being able to come back and tell my story. I was just like you. I grew up here. We were very poor, but there's so many incredible opportunities if you will take advantage of your education and apply yourself. The future is really bright for you.
That's amazing. Now, speaking of the future being bright, R&D at some point transitions, and you do real world operations as well. I know some of those have been involved in disaster response. Can you tell us just a little bit about some of these operations beyond just research
Right.
that you've been able to help with in that local area?
Yeah, so right now we actively support the Choctaw Nation emergency management. So we do deploy with them on tornadoes. We help, with situation awareness. What we found is that a lot of times the people in those communities that are affected want video because they want it for their insurance, and so we make that widely available. We also are supporting our forestry and forest fire and our firefighting stuff right now. That's a huge area, especially doing controlled burns where they can do it safely. Just situational awareness for firefighters saves lives. Just having that view from the sky, maybe with a thermal camera that sees through the smoke, that knows exactly where the hot spots are, getting that information to those people on the ground can save their lives. So we're very actively doing that right now. We're also very actively involved in agriculture because we are very involved in agriculture. We have multiple large ranches. We have all kinds of specialty crops like pecan groves. We raise cattle, we raise bison. So we very actively support those things. So there's a lot of things that are being normalized in terms of UAS. It's, like you said, it's kind of gone beyond the R&D. It's actually application. And that's our hope. One of the things that we make a lot of noise about when we are working with all these other programs like Beyond is move toward normalization. We got to get to normalize operations, because that, first of all, the public is ready. We're not getting any pushback at all. The feedback we get from the public is, when will it happen? When can I order a pizza and I'm going to have it in my house? Or when can I have convenience items or a prescription? They're ready for it, and they want to see it in action before we really get more meaningful information from them. And so that's my hope, is even if it's in certain areas, maybe not wide scale yet, just go to normalized in places. That will help immensely with public acceptance, but it's also going to help our rulemaking. We'll be able to get a lot more data that way that we can use for the rulemaking.
James, besides all of your firsts, a couple of my firsts actually involved you and the Choctaw Nation. One of my first articles for Inside Unmanned Systems magazine was about what you were doing, dropping feral hog traps and feed and all kinds of things, to relieve people of the dirty, dangerous, jobs. And then, of course, my very first piece for Forbes was about all the amazing things you're doing. Now, to move from R&D to real world ops and regularize these and make them scalable, we all know, James, it's about beyond visual line of sight, or BV loss. I think we have a slide about this. You guys not only have extended your BV loss area, but this is something you're really focusing on in the Beyond program. Tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so the picture on the left was the first public BV loss flight we did there. The Speaker of the House, the Chief, quite a few legislative leaders, agency heads in state were there for that picture. That first public BV loss operation we did was a little over 22 miles that day. That particular vehicle, in theory, can fly 180 miles on a single charge. We've flown so many missions, we're getting ready to retire it and hang it on the wall just because we want to preserve that vehicle. It's called the ONSI 250. ONSI stands for Eagle, the Choctaw word for Eagle. The one on the right is one that we're about to start flying, finishing up. It's an ONSI 320. It's bigger. It's just under 55 pounds. So it's a little bit bigger than the 250. And basically, other than the airframe, we bring in a fiberglass carbon fiber airframe with nothing in it, and we build it out. So we integrate everything in it ourselves. We would eventually like to start doing the airframes. We have that capability out here, but right now we just take these and build them out. So it's a pretty custom system that we've had no problems with, and we did that because we wanted to have our own assurances of reliability, being able to take care of it, manage it. So we are building those. That would be eventually, variations will be part of our delivery fleet as we move into that. Right now, we are working on trial missions on our range for health services where we move samples. So we're doing inert payloads, but we're doing equivalent payloads right now to work through the logistics and get a lot of data back for our health administration so they can make their decisions on planning and budgeting in the future.
Well, that's awesome. Now you're obviously making your own drones there, but lots of other people come and do R&D and hopefully some real world ops, shortly with you.
Right.
So tell everybody how they can plug into these efforts, because I think to so many companies, especially foreign companies that want to do work in the United States or kind of get a leg up or be able to prove to the FAA that safety case, because they're looking for their own beyond visual line of sight waiver. How do they tap into all of your expertise and resources in Choctaw? Yeah.
The easiest way is just email us at uas@choctawnation.com. So Choctaw Nation, all one word, just uas@choctawnation.com. I always tell people, bring us propositions. We're not always the best at being able to propose what people should do, but we just say, bring us your idea. Maybe we can make it happen. A lot of times people make the mistake of bringing their business case to the FAA and not a safety case. The FAA wants to see a safety case. They don't necessarily care about the business case. So if you bring your safety case, or bring your business case to us, we could probably help you with the safety case. We can help do that. And as part of the Beyond program, that's what we do. We try to help partner companies when they come in. We try to help them get expedited waivers, get things moving as quickly as we can, or we let them fly under some of the authorities that we have, different COAs that we already have existing. So I would just urge people, just come up with a proposition, contact us. We do host visits. We do quite a bit of military work, so we don't necessarily advertise everything that we do. There's a lot of work going on the defense side right now, but just bring us ideas. We will work with you.
Now, you mentioned partners, James, and you obviously have a very vast network of companies and people that you know and you work with. If I was a company that's, just to say I'm an OEM and I'm making a drone, but I'm really looking for example, an avionics company to integrate with, and maybe for command and control, or a detect and avoid company. Is that something that you can help companies with, to say, hey, we've got so and so over here, and we can partner you up, and you can do this joint effort together?
Sure. And this is a very unique location. We have just about every terrain in North America represented. Not quite any deserts, but everything else is represented on this range. We have miles and miles of 340 kV power transmission lines that actually go across one part of it. So we're very good for things like power inspection. But yes, we can operate and provide a lot of use cases. We usually divide things in 3 buckets: either vehicle developers, support infrastructure developers, or just operators. And we can work with all of those, and we do work with all of those categories.
Okay, that's very good. And I guess when they contact you, you kind of go over the terms and conditions and how all that would work.
Sure.
Do you have, kind of short-term and long-term partners in what you're doing?
Yeah, we have some that are flying literally every day, and some that are flying multiple teams every day. So we have multiple locations where they're operating. That tends to be more on the military side. And a lot of commercial go through phases where it's an R&D cycle. So they'll maybe fly for a few weeks, stop, do something, and come back. But it's interesting. This industry, there are a lot of companies that don't really want people to know what they're doing at all. There's a lot of companies operating in stealth mode. And like this facility, because there are no public vantage points, we can put people somewhere on the range where there is no way to see from any public vantage point what you're doing, what operations are underway. So a lot of people like that. We can preserve that anonymity. We work hard to do that. So right now it's just a little bit of everything. I get excited, every Monday morning about what are we doing this week, because sometimes that new stuff pops up rapidly. And as an old engineer, I enjoy watching a lot of it out here. I'm not able to do the engineering anymore, but I love seeing just the innovation that's underway by some of these companies.
Now, do you also kind of advertise internships or work opportunities? And if so, where can people find that kind of information, James?
We typically go through the Choctaw Nation government itself. So jobs, I think it's jobs.choctawnation.com, if I remember correctly. And so we post those things out there. A lot of universities come to us with internship opportunities where they have money and they want to bring people in, their students, or they're like their younger professors for like a summer or something. So we try to accommodate that as much as we can. I'm hoping in the future, as we begin to achieve some normalization of operations, that we'll have a lot of opportunities, especially for interns, people that get their 107, want to get some real world experience, either being on the flight crew, doing airspace observation, because we use a lot of what we call airspace observers for our operations, or just piloting vehicles. So we're hoping that we can start to build a cadre of people within the nation that have those skills, and they can either work for us or they can work for other entities that'll be operating within the reservation.
I love that. Now, besides all these different ways to find you, to find some of these opportunities, James, where are you going to be live? Oh, by the way, I know one place. He's going to be at my Law Tech Connect workshop, State of the States panel, talking about not only what he's doing, but there's so much going on in Oklahoma as a state as well. So that's at AVSI Exponential on April 22nd. But besides Law Tech Connect, which you all need to register for, where else will you be, James?
We will be at Exponential that whole week there in San Diego. Another one that we do that we're very heavily involved in, we're on the advisory committee and stuff, is the commercial UAV Expo.
In Vegas.
That's in Vegas in early September. So we do that one every year. And then we just a variety of things. We have a lot of speaking engagements that we do, seminars and forums and things. But yeah, I'm looking forward to end of April in San Diego. I think it's going to be a great week and a great time. And very much looking forward to Law Tech Connect. And as Don knows, I'm an engineer, but I love talking about law.
Honestly, the first time I met James, it was at Commercial UAV. It was at some happy hour. And I remember we sat there for like over an hour just talking about the Fourth Amendment. And I'm like, wow, this guy is so smart. He must be. I thought you were an attorney. And your level of legal knowledge is just really uncanny, honestly, James. It's amazing. But James, we are getting super close on time here. So what I want to do is leave you this last opportunity to tell everybody whatever we missed or whatever you want to leave them with as we transition out of the show, real R&D to real world ops.
I'd say the next 10 years are going to be amazing. There's so many neat things converging, and we're seeing huge generational impacts. We're seeing the digital natives, the kids that were always exposed to the internet and these tools. They're doing things that are just absolutely amazing and creative. So the next 10 years are going to wow us, especially in this industry. So what I tell people is buckle up. It's going to be a fun ride for the next few years.
Yeah, and buckle up. And part of that ride should be at the Daisy Ranch in Durant, Oklahoma, with the Choctaw Nation, because that ride is ongoing. And so honored to have the opportunity to speak to you about your story and this journey. And looking forward to seeing you again in person here soon, James. We are, as they say, we are done here. That's all she wrote. We are out.